Hello, everyone. My name is Reese, and this is Where You Want to Be, where I take you with me around the world so we could learn about it, get educated about it, and help each other find our place within it. This is a new series I'm starting where I talk about the different travels I've been lucky enough to do, the locations I've landed in, and all the different stories and history to be learned there. So, first, I'm going to open up with some quick facts about our city of the day, which is Amsterdam. It was the city I started out in when I was lucky enough to backpack Europe last year, and we're going to go into facts, history, and then I'm going to take you through some things historically that happened with the sights of the city, and then I'll give some suggestions on what to do because I love that city, and I loved all the cities I'm going to talk to you guys about. With that being said, I'm going to start with the first fact, which is about the name of Amsterdam. So the etymology of Amsterdam starts with its original name, Amsterdam. This refers to the Amstel River, which the city is based on and around and is the life source of this Dutch city. So the name Amstel pretty much means water area. So Amsterdam continues from the name Amsterdam to be Amsterdam, which means the water area next to the Amstel River. So then we get the name Amsterdam, which has Dama, which is early Dutch for dammed area. So this is pretty much the Amsterdam we get today, which is the dammed city near the Amstel River, and Amstel River being a wet area. So it's the dammed city near the Amstel River, which makes perfect sense because there's a bunch of dams, and we get to the Amstel River, which makes Amsterdam. So our next fact is that Netherlands is the first country in the world to recognize and legalize gay marriage. Often, Amsterdam is considered the gay capital of Europe. Other facts that are also major are that Amsterdam has more canals than Venice. Despite Venice being known for the canals and the bridges, these next few episodes you guys watch are going to talk a lot about how other cities have more claim to that than Venice does. So Venice is the floating city, but some people and nations are the floating giant cities and floating giant countries. One of them being Amsterdam, which has more canals than Venice. On top of that, Amsterdam has the most museums per square meter in the entire world because of that region where all those different museums are. Think the Heineken one, Van Gogh, all those. There's so many per meter in that city that it's more concentrated than any other city in the world. And then finally, Amsterdam, as you expected, has 1.2 million bikes, which is about 30% more bikes than people because there are about 930,000 people in Amsterdam compared to almost 1.3 million bikes. So with that gets to the end there where I'm done giving you guys facts. I'm going to get into the history of this and give you just an overview because if you want more history, I have that for you in another way. But I'm just going to give you kind of a few minute overview rundown of major events that made Amsterdam the way it is so we can understand some other things that will happen later in this episode. So thank you guys for watching so far, and let's get into this history. Our origins with this begin around the 1100s when we know that fishermen were the first settlers in this area. After that, the real story of Amsterdam begins in the 1200s when the first river dikes were built. These are very hard, huge kind of blockers made out of stone or other earthy resources to block off and guide rivers. So, of course, the Amstel River is huge, and since this is a lowland country, it's very low on the sea level chart, it got flooded all the time. So in order for settlement to really thrive, they needed these dikes to guide the river and protect land. And then the next way to protect land was actually the windmills that Amsterdam is very famous for, and the Dutch are very famous for. These windmills used water power to store water and then also generate pumps that would continue to drain out any water that could have flooded residential areas and areas that they were trying to develop the city in. And that's why we get Dam Square. It's named for all the dams in the area and was where those first ones were built and dammed off to create settlement. And now that is the area considered the city center with a lot of the touristy stuff, the blue light district, other districts, things like that. It all comes back to the fact that Amsterdam is, again, a really low-lying area. It's about 2 meters or 6.6 feet below sea level. So anytime waters rise, especially in its early history, Amsterdam was in danger of being flooded. So houses were built on wooden pikes to keep them standing up tall. Wooden planks and all that kept them literally above water. And then as time went on, more dams were built. Dams, dikes, and windmills were built to continuously shape the way the Amstel River moved and to keep it from flooding into residential areas. In 1275, the birth of Amsterdam occurs. This is when the city is considered officially born because a charter from the Count of Holland mentioned the city by name for the first time in history. After that, we get some more major changes starting in the 1300s when the miracle happens. This is a major moment in Christian history that happens in Amsterdam and is still recognized today as a major moment in the history of the city. More on that if you want to look into it at another time. In the 1400s, the Hanseatic League, which was a trade union of Christians backed by a Germanic crusader knighthood, really started to spread their influence. They would crusade into areas that had pagans and Vikings and barbarians, all those terms, and would spread Christianity, but would also spread trade routes for this united German League of traders. They interacted heavily with Amsterdam because Amsterdam was using its control of the waterways and master of being like that to expand trade into different areas, including ones that clashed with and interacted with the trade circles and routes of the Hanseatic League. So they actually offered Amsterdam membership into the Hanseatic League, which Amsterdam rejects and continues to represent itself independently against them, and that creates a clash, which has many interactions throughout history. Then we move on to the 1500s, where this whole time I've been talking, since early in their history, Amsterdam is part of the Netherlands, which is owned under the Spanish crown, the Spanish Empire, all of that. So while that's going on, there's a huge amount of dynastic stuff that happens with the death of Charles V, who was at the time the most powerful man in the world, leading to an opening in the system for Protestantism to sneak its way in, finding a really big home in Amsterdam and the Netherlands. Because of that, there's clashes between the Catholics and the Protestants. The Catholics treat the Protestants really bad. And because of that, especially the Catholics that were not from Amsterdam, they were speaking on behalf of the Spaniards, who were very Catholic. It made the Amsterdam citizens disgusted to see how horribly their brethren were treated, and led to the revolution that led to the 80 Years' War, which is the War of Independence for the Netherlands and Belgium. The 80 Years' War is fought from 1568 to 1648 and ends with the independence of Netherlands, which was heavily supported by Amsterdam, both financially and with its production of humans to fight in the war and the way it represented itself in the eyes of foreign nations in this war as well. So once independent, Amsterdam is able to return to prominence, and the main thing that makes this happen is the invention or creation of the VOC, or the Dutch East India Company. This is the company that ends up going all the way to the east to collect spices and creates a giant trade empire for the Dutch. This is how the Dutch get access to controlling parts of Indonesia, parts in the west like what we know today as Curaçao, Bonaire, the Netherlands Antilles, all those. All that starts with the VOC, which becomes the biggest company in the world at this time. And this leads into the Dutch Golden Age following 1602, which is the birth of the VOC. Right after that, the Golden Age occurs where spices are being sold around the world. There's huge amounts of control of the Dutch Empire that forms under the VOC. And this continues all the way into the 1800s. All of this goes on for a bit, but in the 1672, the disaster year occurs, which is when Amsterdam was invaded by foreign powers, but was able to save itself despite facing a lot of destruction. A bigger invasion happened in the late 1700s when French revolutionaries came to town and trounced the whole area. And then the same thing happened once again when Napoleon invaded. And Napoleon actually placed the Frenchmen on top of the Dutch government for a time, but all that went away in 1815 when Napoleon was finally defeated at Waterloo and the Congress of Vienna changed things. Amsterdam in that period from the 1700s onward had a lot of struggle, but in this part of the 1800s, throughout the rest of that century, when the VOC gets back to having a lot of power and the spice trade explodes, Amsterdam becomes a very, very powerful trade city once again. Also in this year, in the 1800s, 1815, the current dynasty is established in Amsterdam that rules over Netherlands. This is the House of Orange-Nassau, which was a noble family that had always kind of vied for power in this area, but they finally took full power in 1815 and have had it ever since. Despite the fact that this nation does have a constitution and elected officials now, the figureheads of the nation are still the king and queen of Orange-Nassau that exist, or the different royal family members of the House of Orange-Nassau. Then we get to the 1900s, where World War I didn't directly affect Amsterdam as it wasn't a combatant, but commercial trade totally changed, and pressure from both sides to support it financially was super, super present, and because of that, Amsterdam was somewhat involved in the war in that way. Then there's a gap in between the wars, the interwar period. In 1932, Amsterdam was able to actually build a giant wall that blocked itself off from the ocean and allowed more areas to be settled on as water was drained from them as well, thus showing once again the Dutch ingenuity cannot be defeated, and these guys will expand Amsterdam as much as they please. World War II occurs, and it's a very different story from the First War. For 5 days, the Dutch fought against the Austrian painter and his forces as hard as they possibly could. But after that happened, they gave up. They wanted to preserve as much life as possible and knew that victory against the German force was not possible. The occupation that followed lasted 5 long years and was absolutely brutal. 78% of the Jewish population was unalived and taken away from Amsterdam in different ways in this period, and at least 10,000 Jews were protected, though. The people of Amsterdam were very pro-defense. There were many people on the wrong side who exposed where Jews were hiding, where people were being persecuted, things like that. But there were even more people who helped protect people within their city. And after the war finally ended, a resistance broke out because of the fact that there were so many people in Amsterdam that allowed the Holocaust to happen and allowed so many Jewish people to be persecuted in the way they were. People of younger ages rose up in the 80s and started to say, we need to hold accountable the people that were a part of this. So there was a huge movement for people to be arrested, thrown out of the government, all that, and it really highlighted this new era of Amsterdam where it's this new, young, accepting city that doesn't accept the horrors of the old days. In the 2000s, there was a huge shift in what Amsterdam focused on, much more modernization of the city and protecting it from the things that affect it. Obviously, we've been dealing with global warming and different things that have changed the way the world geographically works in the last few hundred years. So Amsterdam is a city that's had to adjust to that. Already lying below sea level in a world where the sea level is rising is a spell for disaster. So there have been a bunch of efforts made to reshape different parts of the city, rebuild old bridges, implement new technology to keep the nation above water and keep it so that the whole city can continue to expand wherever it pleases as sea levels rise. And then that brings us to the present, where today Amsterdam is one of the most culturally diverse cities in this central part of Europe, central northern part of Europe, whatever you want to call it, and is considered a gateway by many people. This is where a lot of people start their journey in Europe. It's very accessible. People work here. People leave here to go to work. All sorts of things like that. Amsterdam is a place of so many different things, and it being this city that has this reputation for deep, widespread acceptance has gained it a notoriety for a place people want to see, both for the party scene, the history, and the museums, just as much as the more fun things like the crazy food and the immigration influence and the acceptance of things like the LGBTQ and all of that. So that's all the history I have for you on Amsterdam for now. But with that being said, I did cover more of this. So the thing that started this whole journey is the Young History Podcast. It's my podcast I did, which covered the history of every single independent country, and now I'm covering all the cities I've been to. I did a longer, much more deep version of this history for Amsterdam in a podcast that is down below. Another thing I did was the history of the Netherlands itself, which is one of the episodes I'm most proud of, also down below. So I'll have both those links down there for you to check out my podcast, Young History, if you're interested in learning more about the history of the Dutch. So these are the sights of Amsterdam. The first major one was the Centraal Station. It's where I took the train from the airport I flew into, right into the heart of the city. It is the largest railway station in the Netherlands, and the station has been in operation since 1889, after being designed by the Dutch architect Pierre Kuipers. This is a massive train station and kind of has that thing we'll see a lot as we cover different lowlands countries, which is very extravagant train stations. They're huge. They have a lot to do in them. So many different historical moments have happened because of the fact that Amsterdam is so close to Germany and the other lowland countries, which are all heavily involved in the history of France and the history of Germany and all the other big players of Europe. So this was awesome one to step into. It was just crazy to be on that first train and step out and see the massive station that it was and, start my journey across Europe. So this was an awesome one for me. And as you guys can see in some of these pictures I have up, that is pretty magnificent. The Royal Palace of Amsterdam. It is the house of the royal family of Orange-Nassau, which rules the Netherlands in a constitutional monarchy. Its construction began in 1648 and concluded in 1665. At first, it was built as the City Hall of Amsterdam during the Dutch Golden Age. It wasn't until Napoleon's brother, Louis Bonaparte, ruled that it became a royal palace. He used it as his royal court after spending much time in The Hague and Utrecht. This gave the Dutch royal family some inspiration to do the same once Napoleon was deposed. Today it stands as a symbol of Dutch resilience and innovation as the royal family of Orange-Nassau has continued to evolve with the nation and the nation evolve with them. Vondelpark. It is a public park area that is 120 acres in area big. It gets about 10 million visitors a year and has been open since 1865. It was originally called Nieuwe Park of Amsterdam or New Park. It was greenery, construction, the Dutch protection of the park playwright was made possible in 1864. Van den Vondel. It was in this year that Christian was placed there in the park in the late 1800s. Established the Association for the Construction of a Park for Riding and Walking. This group put up statues, funded architects, and protected the park so that it could reach its status today. The 1900s saw new additions like improved bike paths, a rose garden, and more. Improvements to the park still happen on occasion to this day. Museumplein is a park area in Amsterdam that has the most popular museums in the city surrounding it, namely the Van Gogh Museum, the Rijksmuseum, and more. The area was originally marshy meadows that were used as the base for candle wax factories. Once the Rijksmuseum was built in 1885, Pierre Kuipers was employed to design an area meant for museums and an open park place. The space is now used for massive events like festivals and concerts throughout the year. The Heineken Experience. This is a museum that explains the history and future of Heineken beer from inside the original Heineken brewery. The brewery opened in 1867 and was the primary brewing facility of the company until 1988. It was in 1991 that the brewery first opened its doors to the public as a visitor center. It became the Heineken Experience in 2001, and after closing for renovations, it reopened in 2008 as a 4-floor experience. This was my favorite thing I did as a tour in Amsterdam. And speaking of my favorite things, let's get into my tips for Amsterdam. In my travels, I've been able to see, eat, and do great things, but also experience quite the opposite. So here are some of my tips and recommendations for Amsterdam. Firstly, book anything in Museumplein in advance. I tried to book things the week I got to Europe, and every major museum in the area was booked weeks out. I was lucky enough to snag a ticket to the Van Gogh Experience because of a friend, but if not, I would have been SOL. So you will hear me say this many times throughout these. Book in advance for things. It's Europe, especially if you're like me and you went in August, September. That's still kind of the end of peak season where everyone is off from school, families are there, people are there on their European vacations, European citizens are there because they're getting like summer breaks in some ways. Of course, all the kids are off, all of that sort of thing. You need to book in advance, especially at this time of year. Second, to go along with that, I say to anyone who is super into art, history, or just museums in general, you should consider getting the Amsterdam or Netherlands Museum Pass. It gets you access to every museum in the city for a set amount of time and grants exclusive access to reserving times for visiting them when necessary. It can be a money saver, but you do need to see a lot of Amsterdam to make it worth your while, so take it with a grain of salt. But for the people who know, Amsterdam has more museums per meter than any other major European city. You need to know that this will be worth it for you. It'll be fun if you want to see museums and museums and museums, if you're the kind of person who likes that. But if you're someone who just wants to go see Van Gogh, go do Heineken, go do something else, you might be better off buying these separate individual tickets for those in advance. 3. You absolutely have to go to the free Cheese Museum. It's only a short walk from the Central Station and Dam Square. I went there just before I took my train out of Amsterdam, and it was a huge surprise. The museum has a free, quote-unquote, tour in the basement, which tells a short story about Dutch cheese. Then the top floor, which you enter on, is where you can buy cheeses, but even better is at least a free samples of authentic Dutch cheese every single day. There are other cheese museums in Amsterdam, but look for this one. It was just called the Cheese Museum. It is free. Like I said, it's like a 5-10 minute walk from Central Station. and it was awesome. There was a bunch of cheese pairings with different jams. The workers there were all super knowledgeable on what's going on. The cute little museum downstairs was just a bunch of little videos and different memorabilia about the history of Dutch cheese. And like I said, I couldn't get enough of trying it. It's where I got to try like authentic Dutch farmer's cheese. I got to try Gouda. All sorts of different Dutch cheeses were there with things to pair with, and everyone's happy to be there, so no one is mad at you for trying samples. I think it was awesome, and I think you should do it. Fourth, and my final recommendation / tip for Amsterdam is you need to go to Albert Market. It was my favorite thing I did in the city, and it was another thing I did right before I left. It is a street-long market that offers produce, handmade products, and the best part to me, homemade Dutch food away from all the tourist stuff. There is nowhere else in the entire city you need to go for a stroopwafel except for here. Here, they are only €2 in cash. You can get chocolate-filled ones, you can get caramel, you can get however authentic or inauthentically you want to do it. They're €2. Euro cash only, by the way, so run to the ATM down the street. It's a super long street. You know, this is where I had a bunch of different Dutch stuff. Like I had their main dish, the pickled herring, or Holland snoei, which is the pickled herring either in a bun or not. I got it in a bun with pickles and onions. Once again, it was like €3 or €4. It was made by a guy right in front of me. I saw him with a stack of fish. He had been pickling. He takes it, he puts it right in the bun for you, doctors it up, asks you what you need, you hand him the cash, you go about your way. It's authentic Dutch people, it's authentic Dutch food, Dutch products, way below tourist prices, and I love it. So, only tip with that, again, is this place is cash only, so don't be like me and order food with someone, and then when they say cash only, I look like a deer in headlights and have to go sprinting down the street for an ATM. So, absolutely go here, absolutely enjoy it, and that is my recommendation with Amsterdam. And that is the very end. I'm giving you all I've got for Amsterdam, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Amsterdam's a very special city. It's, as I said at the start, there's just so much that goes into what the city's become. It's very open, it's very free. It's got so many different things figured out, done, that's growing. And to me, it really is the kind of gateway to Europe. I started here as opposed to starting in one of the huge cities like Paris or Rome because of the fact that it's so central. It's in the lowlands countries. It's close to Germany. It's close to France. It's close to the Nordics. It's central enough that no matter which way you go, you're kind of equally close to all the countries that are far, and you're not going to miss anything. So I was very glad I started here in Amsterdam. Very glad I got to interact with the Dutch, got to see the Dutch culture, learn about their history, and all of that. And if you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, I do encourage you to go down into those links in the bottom, check out some other stuff about both Amsterdam and the Netherlands itself. But with that, that's going to be all, and that is going to be the end of my first episode here on Where You Want to Be. So I truly hope that this finds you well. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you come back to join me for when I get more videos like this out about all the cities I traveled to in Europe and all the cities I've traveled to ever since. So with that, I'm going to bid you adieu and say thank you for watching one more time.